My sister-in-law told my husband I was infertile, smirking across the table at my mother-in-law's birthday dinner. When I asked what she meant, she smiled and said, "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Maybe it's because you can't." I just stared at her. That was 8 months ago. Yesterday, she locked herself in the bathroom and cried so quietly I almost missed it. My SIL kept humiliating me and spreading lies that I was infertile to sabotage my marriage. So I exposed her year-long affair with her ex in front of her fiancé. From the moment I married my husband, his sister, Lena, made it her life's mission to make me feel like an outsider. She's the type of person who smiles to your face but stabs you in the back before you can blink. At family dinners, she would make jokes about me being city spoiled because I grew up in a different area. She'd say things like, "I guess some women just marry for comfort, not love," while staring at me. If I confronted her, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Oh, relax, you're too sensitive, and it's just banter." First, I tried to get along with her for the sake of family peace. I'd compliment her, help her with her errands, even baked her a cake for her birthday once. Her response? She told everyone I had probably just bought it from the store and claimed I made it. My husband would brush it off, telling me not to take her seriously because that's just how she is. Things got worse after my husband and I started trying for a baby. We'd only been trying for a few months, but Lena would drop comments like, "Some women just aren't meant to be mothers," or, "My friend couldn't get pregnant because she waited too long. Maybe you should have started sooner." She'd say these things in front of other people, making it awkward and humiliating. The breaking point came at my mother-in-law's birthday dinner. In the middle of the meal, Lena smirked and said loudly, "It must be so hard for you knowing you can't give my brother kids." Everyone at the table froze. My husband looked shocked, and I just sat there stunned. I asked her what she meant, and she said, "Oh, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You've been trying for a while, right? If it hasn't happened yet, maybe it's because you can't." Later that night, my husband confronted me privately, asking if there was something I wasn't telling him. I was furious. I told him we'd only been trying a short time, and there was no reason to assume anything was wrong. That's when he told me Lena had been telling him in private that I was infertile. She claimed she knew for a fact because a mutual friend had told her I had a health condition that made pregnancy impossible. This was a complete lie. I realized Lena was trying to plant seeds of doubt in my husband's mind about me. This wasn't just her being rude, it was deliberate sabotage. Here's the thing. I've kept my mouth shut for years about Lena's own dirty little secrets. I knew for a fact she'd been sleeping with her ex-boyfriend on and off for the past year while still being in a committed relationship with her current fiancé, Matt. I had proof too. Screenshots, texts, even a photo from a friend who had spotted them together. I never said a word because I didn't want to cause drama, but after what she did to me, that changed. The very next weekend, we had another family gathering, a barbecue at my in-laws' house. Lena was there, smiling smugly at me like she'd won some invisible war. At one point, she made another comment about some people not being able to handle motherhood. That was it for me. In front of everyone, I said, "Funny coming from you, Lena, considering you spend so much time in your ex's bed while Matt thinks you're faithful." The silence was deafening. Lena's face went pale, and she stammered something about me making things up. I calmly pulled out my phone and showed my husband, my in-laws, and even Matt the screenshots and messages. It was undeniable. Lena exploded, screaming at me for ruining her life. She tried to twist it by saying I was just jealous of her relationship and that I had been waiting for a chance to take her down. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "No, Lena, I kept quiet for years, but you tried to destroy my marriage with lies. I just told the truth." Matt left immediately, telling her not to contact him. My in-laws were in shock. My mother-in-law tried to scold me for airing private matters in public, but I reminded her that Lena had been publicly humiliating me for months and spreading lies about my health. My husband stood by me, saying he finally saw Lena for who she really was. Lena has since tried to reach out, alternating between sending me angry texts calling me a homewrecker and pathetic attempts at guilt-tripping me like, "You didn't have to go that far, we're family." She's also claimed I overreacted and that she was just joking about the infertility comments. That's her favorite defense, pretending every cruel thing she says is just a joke, and I'm too sensitive to get it. It's been weeks since the barbecue, and I thought Lena had finally accepted defeat until my husband got an anonymous email with proof I'd been unfaithful. That evening, David walked into our bedroom holding his laptop with this weird look on his face and set it down on the bed between us. The screen showed an email with photos of me supposedly meeting some guy named Brian at different coffee shops and restaurants over the past month. I grabbed the laptop and started scrolling through the message, and right away I could tell it was Lena's writing style because she always uses these specific phrases like, "just thought you should know," and "hate to be the bearer of bad news," which were all over this email. The metadata on the photos showed they were created just 3 hours after the barbecue incident, which made it pretty obvious who was behind this. David sat down next to me and said he didn't believe any of it, but needed to understand why someone would go through all this trouble to fake evidence against me. I immediately called Nina and put her on speaker while David watched me pace around the room, pulling at my hair and trying not to cry. Nina works in HR and does investigations all the time, so she knew exactly what to look for in the email headers and attachments. She walked us through checking the photo properties, and we could see they were badly photoshopped, using my LinkedIn profile picture pasted onto some random woman's body in these restaurant photos. The IP address from the email account traced back to the area near Columbus General Hospital where Lena works as a nurse, which pretty much confirmed what we already knew. After we hung up with Nina, David went to his home office, and I could hear him moving around in there for about an hour before everything went quiet. I found him sitting at his desk, staring at our wedding photos and family pictures from over the years with this lost expression on his face. He started pointing at different photos and telling me about moments he'd forgotten, like when Lena got jealous at our engagement party and made that scene about not being included in the planning, or when she kept insisting he deserved someone from their neighborhood, not some outsider like me. The pattern was right there in every photo where she stood slightly apart from us, or had that fake smile she does when she's angry. His phone rang, and it was Carol practically screaming that we needed to come over over right now because Lena had shown up at their house crying and claiming I'd threatened her life. We drove over in complete silence, and when we walked in, Lena was on the couch with mascara perfectly smeared down her face in these artistic streaks, while Carol rubbed her back. Lena jumped up when she saw me and started yelling about how I'd been jealous of her since day one and had planned everything to destroy her happiness because I couldn't stand that she had a better relationship than mine. Carol was eating it up and kept shooting me these disappointed looks while Lena went on about how I'd stalked her and Jake and set them up to get caught. Robert pulled David aside into the kitchen, and I could see them through the doorway having this intense conversation while Robert showed him something on his phone. Later, David told me Robert had gotten a text from Matt asking if the family knew about Lena's affair before the barbecue happened, which made Robert admit he'd seen her car at the Days Inn off Route 23 multiple times when she was supposed to be working 12-hour shifts. Robert said he'd kept quiet because he didn't want to cause drama, but now he was questioning if that was the right choice since it let things get this far. Back in the living room, Lena suddenly stood up and announced she was pregnant with Matt's baby while putting her hand on her stomach in this really dramatic way. Carol gasped and immediately switched into protective grandmother mode, asking Lena how far along she was and if she'd seen a doctor yet. I remembered seeing Lena drinking wine at her friend's birthday party just last week and posting photos with cocktails on her Instagram story 3 days ago. When I pointed this out, Lena claimed she just found out today and pulled a pregnancy test out of her purse to wave around as proof. My phone buzzed, and it was a text from Nina with a screenshot from Jake's Instagram story from 3 hours earlier, showing him at CVS buying pregnancy tests with the caption, "Doing a favor for a friend," with that winking emoji he always uses. I showed David the screenshot without saying anything and watched his face change as he put the pieces together about whose baby this might actually be, if there even was a baby at all. I excused myself to the bathroom where I leaned against the sink, taking deep breaths and trying not to throw up from the stress of everything. I pulled out my phone and texted Matt asking if he'd be willing to meet with me to talk about what was really going on with Lena. I stared at myself in the mirror, seeing how tired and worn down I looked from all this drama that never seemed to end. My phone lit up with Matt's response saying he could meet tomorrow morning at 10 at the coffee shop on High Street near his apartment. That night, I couldn't sleep and went downstairs around 3 in the morning to find David already in the kitchen making tea with his back to me. There's something odd about how quickly Lena shifted from denying everything to suddenly claiming she's pregnant with Matt's baby right when she was cornered. I wonder if she keeps that pregnancy test in her purse for emergencies, or if Jake really did buy it for her just hours before this whole scene played out. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, not saying anything for the longest time, just holding our mugs and staring at nothing. He finally told me he was sorry for not defending me more over the years, and admitted he always knew Lena was difficult, but took the easy path to avoid fights. He reached across the table and took my hand, and we both knew without saying it that our marriage was being tested in ways we never expected. The next morning, I got to the coffee shop early, and Matt was already there in a corner booth looking like he hadn't slept in days with dark circles under his eyes. He started talking before I even sat down, telling me how Lena had been acting weird for months with secret phone calls and leaving work early, and suddenly losing interest in their wedding plans. He pulled out his phone and showed me emails from a private investigator he'd hired 2 months ago, but called off after Lena cried and promised to be honest with him. The investigator's report had photos of Lena meeting Jake at that same Days Inn Robert mentioned, and records of her calling in sick to work on days when Jake was off from his job. Matt's hands shook as he slid a thick folder across the coffee shop table toward me. Inside were dozens of photos from the private investigator showing Lena entering Jake's apartment at all hours. There she was, kissing him in his car outside a grocery store. Another showed her leaving his place at dawn, wearing the same clothes from the night before. The dates went back over a year, and one photo made my stomach turn. It was from the night of me and David's anniversary dinner when Lena had told everyone she was working a double shift at the hospital. Instead, she was wrapped around Jake in the parking lot of his apartment complex. I asked Matt why he never said anything before now. He stared at his coffee and admitted he'd been in denial for months. Every time he questioned her, she'd twist things around and make him feel crazy. She'd say he was being paranoid and controlling. Jake was just a friend helping her with workout routines for their wedding. Looking back, Matt realized how badly she'd played him. My phone buzzed with a text from David saying Lena had convinced Carol to call an emergency family meeting that evening to address my supposed vendetta against her. I showed Matt the message, and he immediately offered to come with all his evidence. Part of me hesitated, knowing this would blow up everything, but Matt insisted we had to stop her. After Matt left, I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Nina to update her on everything. She suggested I start documenting every single thing Lena had done with dates and details to build a timeline. While we were talking, another email popped up on my phone from an anonymous address. This one said if I didn't back off, they'd send those fake photos of me cheating to my employer and get me fired. 2 hours later, I forwarded the threatening email to Nina, who immediately recognized it as criminal harassment. She wanted me to go to the police right away, but I wasn't ready to turn this into a legal thing yet. Nina reminded me that Lena worked as a nurse with access to patient information and medications. Someone this vindictive shouldn't be in that position of trust. My phone rang, and it was David, sounding angrier than I'd ever heard him. Lena had just shown up at his office with Carol and made a huge scene in front of all his coworkers. She was crying and carrying on about how I was mentally unstable and needed professional help. His boss had to step in when Lena started wailing in the lobby about our family being torn apart. David told them both to leave immediately, and now HR was asking him questions about the whole mess. I drove home feeling exhausted and found my front door slightly open, even though I knew I'd locked it that morning. Nothing looked disturbed as I walked through each room, but something felt wrong. In the bathroom, I found a negative pregnancy test sitting on my counter with a note that said, "Since you're so interested in who's pregnant." My hands were shaking as I realized Lena still had the spare key we'd given her years ago for emergencies. David got home and found me in the garage getting tools to change all the locks myself. himself. He grabbed a screwdriver and started helping without saying a word. We worked together, taking out each lock and putting in new ones while the weight of everything hung between us. David mentioned he'd filed a report with HR about the office incident, and security had the whole thing on camera showing Lena's performance. That evening, we drove to Carol and Robert's house for the family meeting Lena had demanded. She'd actually prepared a PowerPoint presentation about my supposed pattern of jealous behavior toward her. Before she could even start, Matt walked through the door carrying his laptop and announced he had something everyone needed to see first. Lena went white as a sheet and started stammering that he had no right to be there since they weren't together anymore. Matt ignored her and connected his laptop to the TV while Lena scrambled to block the screen. The first photo appeared showing Lena and Jake kissing in a restaurant while she was supposedly at a work conference. Carol gasped and covered her mouth while Robert's face got harder with each new image. Lena tried to grab the laptop claiming the photos were doctored, but you could clearly see Jake's distinctive dragon tattoo on his arm in multiple shots. When she couldn't deny it anymore, she spun around and pointed at me saying I'd driven her to seek comfort elsewhere because of my constant attacks on her. The front door suddenly opened and Jake walked in looking confused, holding a plastic bag from the drugstore. He looked right at Lena and asked why she needed him to bring another pregnancy test when she'd already taken 3 this week. The whole room went dead silent as everyone turned to stare at Lena, whose face went white. Carol stood up from the couch and demanded to know if Lena was pregnant while Robert grabbed the laptop to pause the video. Lena started backing away from everyone and her hands were shaking as she tried to explain, but Jake kept talking, saying she'd texted him it was an emergency. Matt's face changed from anger to something darker as he processed what Jake just said about multiple tests. Lena finally broke down crying and admitted she wasn't actually pregnant, but thought if she claimed to be, then Matt would take her back. She said she figured the family would support her over me if there was a baby involved and it would fix everything. Jake dropped the bag and started backing toward the door, saying she told him the tests were for a friend at work. Robert moved to block the doorway and said nobody was leaving until everyone heard the whole truth about what had been going on. I stood there watching Lena's entire world fall apart and felt weirdly numb about it all. David's hand found mine and squeezed it gently, which made me realize this was the first time he'd shown me support in front of his family. Carol was crying into her hands while Robert kept demanding answers, and Matt pulled out his phone to record everything. Jake looked trapped by the door and started explaining that Lena told him she and Matt were in an open relationship. He pulled out his phone and showed everyone text messages where Lena claimed Matt was seeing other women too. She'd told Jake their engagement was just for show to make her traditional parents happy, and they both had permission to date others. Matt laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound, and said he'd been planning their wedding while she was telling these lies to everyone. Lena tried to grab Jake's phone, but he held it away from her and kept scrolling through their messages. The texts showed months of lies about Matt supposedly cheating, and Lena claiming she was stuck in a loveless relationship. Carol finally stopped crying and told Lena to get out of her house immediately and not come back until she could be honest. We left shortly after that and drove home in silence, both too tired to process everything that had just happened. When we pulled into our driveway, I noticed our mailbox was stuffed full of papers that weren't there when we left. David grabbed them and found printed copies of those fake photos of me with some guy named Brian. There was also a long, rambling letter from Lena about how I'd destroyed her family and ruined her life. Our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, came out and mentioned she'd seen Lena at our mailbox around dinner time taking pictures of our house. David carefully saved everything in a folder, saying we'd need it as evidence if things got worse. I felt a chill run through me, realizing Lena knew our daily routines and when we weren't home. The next morning, Nina showed up early with coffee and a yellow legal pad covered in notes about harassment laws. She'd spent the whole night researching restraining order requirements in Ohio and criminal harassment statutes. She explained that Lena entering our home, the workplace harassment, and the threatening emails all counted as criminal harassment. I wasn't sure about getting the police involved, but Nina pointed out that Lena's behavior was getting worse, not better. She showed me articles about stalking cases that started just like this and escalated to violence. David's phone rang while we were talking, and it was his HR department requiring him to come in for a mandatory meeting. Someone had sent them the fake photos of me with Ryan, along with an anonymous complaint about inappropriate conduct. David realized Lena was trying to destroy both our careers now and immediately called his company's legal department. They told him to bring all the evidence we had and document everything that had happened so far. I went to work but couldn't focus on anything and kept checking my phone every few minutes for new threats. My colleague Isabella asked if I was okay because I'd been jumpy and distracted for days now. Lena's master plan just fell apart faster than a house of cards in a windstorm. Fake pregnancy tests, secret boyfriend deliveries, and PowerPoint presentations about jealousy while actively committing crimes. I told my supervisor the basic situation without too many details, and she suggested I take some personal days. She documented our conversation in case I needed FMLA protection later if things continued to escalate. That afternoon, Matt called me with disturbing news about Lena's behavior at the hospital where she worked. 3 of her nursing colleagues had contacted him worried about her recent performance and mental state. She'd been making medication errors, showing up late, and was found crying in the supply closet multiple times. One colleague mentioned Lena had been accessing patient records she didn't need for her regular duties. Matt said they were worried she might be looking up information on people for personal reasons which made them uncomfortable. Nina called me later with even worse news from her contact in the hospital's administration department. Her friend had checked the system logs and found Lena had been repeatedly accessing the employee database. She was specifically searching for anyone named